Hey, and welcome to Matt and Jess TV. I am Matt Roast here with Jessica Bun Bun, and this is our American Horror Stories Season 3, Episode 9 reaction and review. This is the finale, The Thing Under the Bed.
I was so excited about this episode, and I feel like it didn't disappoint for me. I feel like this is a really relatable monster story. So
Mhm.
many of us are, oh, there was a thing under the bed, there's a thing in the closet. Like there's always that monster that's somewhere in the room with you. So when I heard this title, I was like, oh, this is going to be one that I think a lot of us are going to look back and be like, I remember that time that I was scared of the thing under the bed.
Yeah, a quick little story here. I learned to read in part because I used to read a lot of Calvin and Hobbes comics, and Calvin and Hobbes, one of the books that's called Something Under the Bed is Drooling, and it was this big recurring theme in those comic strips that Calvin
Yeah.
always thought there were monsters under the bed. So
Mhm.
this whole idea has been a part of my life since I was really, really little, and I was
Yeah.
hoping that this episode would capture some of the fear, some of the imagination, the craziness associated with all of it. Now, do I think this episode like blows the entire season over the top and does something that I've never seen before? Not necessarily, but it's
Yeah.
an entertaining episode. It was short, it got to the point, it made us a little bit scared. I don't know what else I could be begging it to do.
And I think that they tied it together really well because when you're looking at something like the monster under the bed, there's,
Yeah.
I mean, a few different ways you could go about it. But the idea that they tied this into dreams and dreamscape and sort of that Freddy Krueger of it all, I mean, like those movies really scare the life out of
Yeah.
me. The idea that when you're in a sleep state that something can sort of come and get you and kill you in that state has always been terrifying to me. I cannot watch those movies. But here it's sort of that same feeling that yes, there's the dream state that Mary is under where she's able to come and get people, but she's able to do it while people are awake, which makes it even scarier.
Well, we're going to try to break down everything that happened here, what we take away from this episode. Before we go further, though, hit that subscribe button because Jess and I, throughout the course of this day, we have watched all of this second part of American Horror
Yeah.
Stories, all 5 episodes. We're going to have all those reviews up for you. Hit that subscribe button so you also don't miss our coverage of Grotesquerie, another Ryan Murphy show that is currently on FX.
We are also covering The Penguin exclusively over on our Patreon. We only have video reviews for that show over there. We'll have a link for you
Mhm.
below in our description box if you want to join our Patreon. It also helps Matt and I here at the channel. Thank you so much to everybody who supports us.
Thank you. We really, really appreciate that. Okay, so just big picture from the start here. I like how this episode played a lot into the idea of dreams, but also into the idea of worst fears, how those can linger, and how in the search for answers, you often are going to find something that you don't really like. And that's kind of something that Jillian loses sight of over the course of this. I mean, she's so desperate to learn the truth about what happened to her husband. And I do kind of wonder on the other side of all this, if she hadn't gone through all of this, would she still be okay?
And I was really glad to learn that it wasn't just Jillian had killed her husband.
Yeah,
I
I
mean,
know.
we had just seen this before with Backrooms in the first episode
Yeah.
of this, part two, that I was like, are we kind of going there again? She's the only person that's in the room. Is it her in a dream state? We saw her talking to her sister, and her sister knows that these dreams have been going on a long time that have had her doing things in real life outside of it, putting spaghetti in the pillow, which is,
Mhm.
a far cry from killing your husband. But
Yeah.
there was no real motivation I felt from Jillian, even in a dream state, to want to do this. Like, yes, he was, being like, hey, let's have this baby, but she was on the pill. So she knew she wasn't going to get pregnant. So even though she was keeping this secret, she knew that she wasn't going to end up pregnant, which was something that was causing her a lot of stress. She had somewhat control over the situation, even if she wasn't being honest about it. So things were not out of control in a way that she would need to do this even in a dream state. So I'm glad that that's not where they went with it.
No, I'm glad that they kind of took a different direction here. I'm not surprised that, of course, there were people investigating and raising questions about what it is that happened here. Because, I
Of
mean, this
course.
episode is, as much as anything, just a commentary on how everyone wants to have a definite answer to everything that goes on, even
Mhm.
though some things in this world are unexplainable. Whether it be, Jillian herself wants to get answers on all of this. The police want to get answers on all of this. It's just like, how far are you willing to stretch the imagination in order to get them? And sometimes, facing the monster can be, especially in this case, the worst possible thing you do.
I think the weakest part of the episode for me was that there was a detective that was following around. It's like, I'm gonna find the answers. I'm gonna get you, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Where I mean, she was the only person that was in the room with her husband at that time. I feel like she would have either already been
Hmm.
checked and cleared, or she'd already be arrested and not cleared yet. Like one of those things is happening. And of course, we've got this one detective is just like, I'm just going to keep following you
Yeah.
around. I was like, they could have instead just cleared her and then got rid of this detective. They didn't add anything to it. Even when they said, "Oh, well, we found your pills that you were hiding underneath the mirror. That means you did it." I'm like, all that means is that she didn't want to have a baby. That doesn't mean she didn't do anything else.
Well, yeah, and you didn't have to, you wouldn't have had to change the rest of the episode. Like, there still would have been plenty of
Yeah.
people who would have sent the mail, who would have thought she did it. Like, all of that still would have been there. But I'm going to go really crazy because I'm
Okay.
going to try to establish the origin story here for what I think happened with Mary.
Okay.
So we go back to the start of this episode. We have the chickadee flashback where, she's told by her dad, okay, if you go back to your room and just be brave, you'll get, pancakes and bacon the next morning, which, everybody likes pancakes and bacon. I'm willing to be brave for that as well.
Me
But
too. It's a great bribe.
what I think might have happened here is the bed monster comes out and she makes some sort of pact with the bed monster at this point because she's trying to be brave. She doesn't want to die. And ultimately, bed monster and her become one. Now she
Mhm.
has to go into this coma for a long period of time, but apparently there's a certain expiration date with this where she's able to kind of come back out of it and be a part of the world again. But it seems like she was able to do something to become a different state than all of these other quote unquote victims. Because we know from that final showdown with what happened with Jillian that there is this monster that kind of emerges behind her. So it's not like she is committing these acts herself. She's kind of in tandem with this other thing.
Yeah, she's being used, and I like the idea that she made a sort of a deal with the monster under the bed to kind of be like, okay, if you protect me or I protect you, we become one sort of thing. I'll do your bidding for you. And she didn't exactly know what she was signing up for because
Yeah.
she was really, really young at that time that she would have made this kind of deal to be able to sort of get through everything. But we also saw that there was someone that had come into her room and
Yeah.
was attacking her, and her father killed this man, and everything just went sideways from there. It's also possible that maybe the man that had come into the room ended up sort of coming into her dreams as well. And they also became one, where this monster that had attacked her, she then became the monster.
Yeah, I think there's a pretty good metaphorical case to be made with that. I think there's a pretty good psychological case to be made with that.
Yeah, I mean, she watched her father kill somebody.
Yeah, it's something that's going to stick with you big time when you are really, really young, and these hauntings could spiral out of control while you're in a comatose state, and that could lead to her sort of becoming or thinking that she has become this monster. And everything in that sense could be metaphorical. But I think what they did a very good job at throughout this episode is just making it that only seeing a part of the monster was a lot more effective than seeing the whole monster, because so much of horror is about the things that you cannot see, and seeing just this big claw sort of like crawling out and grabbing people, like there was enough legitimate fear there.
Yeah, because I think for a lot of people, the monster under the bed is just this giant clawed hand that comes out to get you, kind of
Yeah.
thing. And it makes it so that all of us watching it, for those of us who put a face to our monster
Yeah.
under the bed, we can see that claw and put our own faces to be like, oh man, I remember when I used to be scared of ABC under the bed, and that claw represents for all of us. I think it made it 10 times scarier.
Yeah, they set up the monster, they set up the reveal, and they set up the arc pretty well. They sort of realized, okay, you know what? This is not something, unlike other stories this season, looking at you, Leprechaun, that we need to just stretch out to no end. This is only going to be 35 minutes, but that's fine. We are getting the message that we want to get across, which
Yeah.
sort of is the lingering effects of trauma, plus also how that can end up creating a monster in its own way. How that monster expresses itself, that's an entirely different story.
This is one of the few episodes this season, except for Clone, which
Yeah,
also had enough time. I would have loved to watch a whole season of Clone, but like it
yeah.
had enough time to tell its story properly. This episode also gave just enough time to tell this story properly, where it didn't feel like it was too short. And
Yeah.
I just didn't get enough information, and it didn't drag out like Leprechaun,
Ugh.
and they made the monster really scary.
Yeah, I mean, if there are issues with this episode, I mean, they're basically issues you could have with almost any episode of American Horror
Yeah.
Stories where some characters are making kind of ludicrous last minute decisions. Jillian is obviously a very desperate person because
Yep.
of what she's gone through, but I mean, she's basically not caring about any rules, laws, anything. She shows up at the dad's place. She's just a-okay with staying there for the night without asking any real questions.
And she rips a board with nails right off the door with her bare hands. I've seen this so many times in movies and TV, and I'm just like, I don't know what kind of strength you guys have, but like a board nailed in, I couldn't.
No, she apparently having all these dreams has given her super strength. She's more than capable of taking all of that on. Like, yeah, there's a lot of logical leaps that it's requiring you to make, but we also
Yeah.
did have a good supporting character in the midst of all of this, and probably one of the standouts of the entire episode, and that is Niles.
Oh, Jeff Hiller. I love him so much.
Yeah.
So much. He was Whiteley in New York City, American Horror Story, and he is such a good character in this, in that. I just love him.
It really raises a question, and I think this is something that's probably frustrating for a lot of people out there too. Why are they not casting more actors from the main show over
Right.
on Horror Stories? And I understand you may not be able to get Sarah Paulson or Jessica Lange or some of these other people, but actors like Jeff Hiller are people who have like a small amount of screen time over a course of the season. Like, can you
Mhm.
not try to find little roles for them? Because you want to get people watching these. And I think as we're sitting here and covering this show all day, there wasn't exactly a ton of promotion leading up to this
No.
season. And while, yeah, you've got Henry Winkler in one episode, and this episode has Debbie Ryan, there's not a lot of just actors nostalgia wise with this franchise that people would be like, oh man, I'm really excited to get in and see this now because of this, like Lily Rabe is in it. And it's just sort of like, why not do more of this?
Now, one other thing I really liked that they did really well is when they had Jill go to the house and she laid down on the bed that had nothing underneath it. It was just a mattress
Yeah.
on the floor. I was really happy to see that because for me, I was just kind of like, well, if you're worried about the thing under your bed, you can always buy a bed that has drawers under it, or
Yeah.
you can, I have a rabbit, and my rabbit has gone under the bed and ate a hole through the back of my bed. Anyways, I got boards that I put all across under my bed, so I can't put anything under it. My bunny can't get under there anymore.
Yeah.
It's all just blocked off. So it's kind of like, okay, if somebody like with chickadee, oh, in the morning I'll make you bacon and pancakes. It's like, it should have been in the morning. I'm going to buy some lumber and I'm going to put like a barrier under your bed so that the thing that's under your bed is no longer under your bed anymore. How does that sound? Does that sound like a solution? And I feel like that could have been something that would put his daughter's mind to rest.
Yeah, oddly there were a lot of beds that were resting really high off of the floor in this episode.
Yeah, so that's why I was really glad to see Jill laying down on a mattress on the ground to show me that it wouldn't have mattered. It wouldn't have mattered. The bunny would have ate right through it and gone right through.
They, in the amount of time that they had, I feel like they really thought through a lot of different ideas, a lot of different ways to scare us with the monster. I think at a certain point they were like, you know what? Nobody's really going to care about the monster's origin story itself. Like the whole purpose of
No.
this is to just try to scare us and unsettle us with something that is kind of a common fear that a lot of people have. It's
Mhm.
very much sort of like opening up a page of folklore and, the mysteries of the thing under the bed. It's a
Mm.
lot like, urban legends, things that we all talk about when we're kids. This is always going to be a sweet spot for this show.
The thing I also really like is the ending of this. So we talked a little bit about this
Yeah.
in the third episode of this second part, which is X,
Yeah.
Ward X, we'll call it, because X is something else at this point. But anyways, where spoiler alert, if
Yeah.
you haven't seen it yet, okay,
Mm.
if you're still with us, at the end still has sort of our hero didn't really make it out of this whole thing. And I really like when they do have, especially with these shorter stories, where not every hero is going to get
Yeah.
out of this alive, or they're not going to get out of this completely fine. Sometimes it doesn't work out and you're just not going to get out alive. And that's what ended up happening here, where we had Jill try to go and confront this monster under the bed, Mary, the person that's also, melded with her. She didn't make it. And now it's going to rest on her sister's shoulders of, man, I should have just believed her and I didn't. And now we're here. Now I get to carry this with me. And Mary's going to go on marrying up the joint.
I hope that Megan, in the sequel that we may or may not and probably not will have, I want to believe that Megan's going to go out there and try to get some answers, try to get some justice for her sister after all of this. But,
Yeah.
who really knows? I mean, we had an ending that was perfect for the genre.
Yeah.
Also, still opened the door for a little bit something more. But I think if we're going to look at this second part of the season in totality, I would say Thing Under the Bed is probably number 3 to me. It's like right in the middle. This did not have like the pure like creativity and attempt to appeal to modern day audiences kind of like Backrooms did. And I think we're both in agreement. You can correct me if I'm wrong, that Clone is by far the best
By
episode of
far.
this group.
It was so good from start to finish. I absolutely loved Clone, but this was a really solid episode.
Yeah, it fulfilled what I think a lot of us want from American Horror Stories. And given that this is a year where we're not getting American Horror Story proper, seemingly season 13 has been ordered. There are rumors about maybe Sarah Paulson's going to be in it, but we'll kind of wait and see on that.
That's the thing, is like American Horror Stories is typically really hit and miss. You usually get a couple of duds in a season, and then, you get some really good ones. And with just these 5 episodes, I mean, there was really only one that I just didn't like at all, which was Leprechaun. And with some of the other ones like X and Backrooms, I just wanted more of it.
Yeah.
I felt like it could have been longer and it would have been even better. But overall, these 5 episodes, I mean, besides Leprechaun, were really good. This was a really fun watch.
Yeah, I had a good time with this part of the season, and I hope that in the future, provided we get more, they take their time. Maybe doing, only 5 or 6 episodes a year is smart because it means that some of the cream sort of rises to the top. And I don't know how Leprechaun managed to rise to the top, but that's neither here nor there.
Yeah, I don't think I'm going to be having nightmares about this leprechaun in, pajamas.
No, but that is the Thing Under the Bed, and that's what we got on American Horror Stories Season 3. This was a fun, crazy one-day ride for us. I hope you guys like these episodes. Let us know what you think. Let us know, who would you want to see in future seasons of this?
Yeah.
And also hit that subscribe button so you don't miss our coverage of Grotesquerie, which we are right in the midst of. And if you want to support us further, join our Patreon. We have a link in the description below where the Penguin is being covered there exclusively. And we'll see you here next time.